Good morning, distinguished excellencies, presidents and vice presidents and members of parliaments, distinguished president of the Chamber of Deputies of Luxembourg, Mr. Regent. It's a great honor for me to be here today with you, with all of you, as a representative of Ukraine. In this regard, I would like to convey my gratitude to you personally, Mr. Regent, and to Malta team, because it's two countries that was very close to our participation here. That's why we're very grateful to this possibility to take part in the third session of 16th Conference of Presidents and Parliaments of Small European States. I would like to share with you the information about the current security situation in Ukraine. As you heard from my president, Ruslan Stefanchuk, today is 482nd day of full-scale Russian military aggression against Ukraine. During this awful 482 days, Ukraine protects its independence, freedom, and what is the most important, its identity. Russians want to demolish us as a nation. Every single day, they're trying to achieve the goal in blowing up the international world order that was established after World War. In this regard, one of the key goals of Russia is to undermine the unity among European countries. Our border is constantly suffering from terrorist attacks from Russian territory. Cities, villages, universities, schools, churches, hospitals, museums, theaters, and critical infrastructures are shelled from Russian territory with artillery, missiles, or guided bombs. We lost Ukrainians every day and every time, and every hour, every minute. Men, women, children, women. Russians don't only kill us, but also are trying to steal our future, deporting Ukrainian children to the aggressor's territory. Thousands and thousands of children stolen by Russia. We must bring them all home, back to Ukraine. He's the voice of all states, large and small, is vital. Vital for parents, for Ukrainian kids in Russian custody, and vital from Ukrainians' future. However, Russia failed to do that. From the very beginning of the Russian full-scale war, all countries presented today here with Ukraine. And we very appreciate you, all that you did for us for this year and for these 9 years. Of course, all countries presented today here with Ukraine providing us vital military, humanitarian, and financial support, as well as eventually implementing sanctions against the aggressors. Ukrainians feel this support and will never forget this. Ukrainian unity is what extremely important to us right now. The unity of all those who share with us the key values, the values of life, the values of freedom, the value of law, and the value of respect for every nation, for every country, every community, and every person. As you know, on the night of June 6th, the Russian Federation blew up the dam of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. It's one of the examples what Russia did, what Russia do, and what Russia will do in Ukraine. The explosion of the dam of Kakhovka is an ecological and technological act of terrorism. The biggest technological disaster in Europe in recent decades, yet another example of Russian genocide against Ukraine. This is the Kremlin's response to country calling for peace talks with the Russian Federation. We call on each civilized country to recognize this atrocity as an act of terrorism made by Russians. Russia does not intend to stop, and it's continued its brutal war against Ukraine, destroying our cities, killing civilians, and turning the life of each Ukrainian into a never-ending nightmare. But this war has demonstrated that the world will not allow the Russian evil to triumph, and it will take all possible efforts to stop it. Here the contribution of both large and small countries is extremely valuable. Small countries don't have big armies, but you have a strong commitment to the rule of law and the triumph of justice, which can make Russian perpetrators face the legal consequences of their atrocities. We are grateful to all countries who joined the core group in creating a special international war crime tribunal, and we ask all countries to support all initiative of creating such a tribunal which will investigate and prosecute Russian crimes committed against Ukraine. I want to add some words about two special issues, and maybe it will be our answer to your very popular questions that you asked me last night, how you can help more, how you can add more to our fighting for democracy. First issue is sanctions. I want to inform you that despite the great sanctions efforts of various countries, the Russian economy has almost adapted to them. The Kremlin still has enough funds to finance aggression against Ukraine, and supplies of components for Russian military equipment continue in large quantities. Therefore, sanctions should be drastically strengthened and as soon as possible. For example, the Ha-101 missile, which the Russian used to hit a residential building in Kryvyi Rih last week on June 13, as a result of which 12 civilians died and almost 3 dozen were injured, was made in Russia in April 2023. It was made some months ago. About 15 components of this rocket, mostly microelectronics, are produced in the countries of the free world. The equally well-known Caliber missile had at least 8 components from the United States. Other rockets contain components from the Netherlands, Switzerland, Japan. The absolutely majority of high-tech components enters the Russian Federation through China. Also through Turkey, Thailand, United Arab Emirates, Kazakhstan, Maldives. This threat needs to be stopped. At the end of April, a special international sanction group, McFaul-Yermak, presented a second action plan to increase sanction pressure on Russia. First of all, it's about the further introduction of sanctions against the energy complex of the Russian Federation and the defense industry, restriction on the use of financial instruments, the issue of confiscation of assets of Central Bank of Russia, and their further transfer to Ukraine as well as our arrears. The new package announced by the European Commission will mainly focus on enforcing sanctions and combating their circumventions. The European Commission gives a clear signal that they are not going to stop and will intensify the sanction pressure. It's important to close loopholes for circumventing sanctions, including through the introduction of restrictive measures against countries that provide the Russian Federation with revenues and high-tech components of European manufacturers to circumvent sanctions. Also, Russia should be excluded from the FATF. Those who finance terrorism should have no place among those who fight it. It's understandable. Second issue about children. It's very awful news and very awful information, but since February 24, more than 1,500 children have been killed or injured. We registered 490 deaths and 1,026 injured. But, of course, this data don't take into account the situation on the occupied territories. All in all Ukrainian children suffered from the war in one way or another since the beginning of 2022. More than 7.5 million children living in Ukraine have suffered psychological trauma. Mass forced deportation of children is a crime by any standards and a direct sign of genocide. It's part of Convention about Genocide, Article 2. Deportation of children is sign of genocide. According to our data, on June 19, we recorded that forced deportation of 19,499 children by the aggressors. These are those who have been clearly identified. But we understand that this number is more. For example, according to Russian mass media, more than 744,000 Ukrainian children were illegally deported to the Russian Federation. This figure is not supported by any data, but because the Russian aggressors don't provide any international organization to inspect this, to check this. So far, only 373 children have been returned. Based on their stories, a terrible picture emerged. Russia diligently hides the whereabouts of children. They change names and citizenship, deliver to remote region. They adopt without the consent of relatives. Children are systematically brainwashed with dirty propaganda, forced to undergo military training. They want to secure everything Ukraine out of them. Some of the children may be used for drug testing also. We already know about numerous facts of bullying. The stories of the children who were returned are impressive. You can find a small part of these stories on the special state portal Children of Far that we opened last time. The systematicity and planning of Russian action is obvious. From the beginning of the last cult invasion, the aggressor immediately systematically took children from orphanages or regular schools, separated families during the filtering process, sometimes simply killed the parents. Therefore, we clearly see the return of all our children is a component of Ukraine's victory. This to one of the elements of the peace formula of President Zelensky. On May 30, the President of Ukraine opened the Center for the Protection of Children's Rights in Kyiv. According to his principles, to his ideology, it's a children-friendly place where they can receive the highest quality help. There will be a multidisciplinary integrity team, which includes representatives of law enforcement, criminal justice, child protection services, as well as medical professionals and psychologists. We are working on creating an international working group about children return. It will consist of high-level specialists who are deeply familiar with the issues of children's rights. The group will develop specific recommendations, what the world community should do to return and protect the rights of Ukrainian children. Among the tasks are recommendations for the modernization of existing or the creation of new international institutions to prevent similar situations. We have to protect children in every corner on the planet. I want to invite you to join this special international working group. We know that some countries joined to core group about special war criminal tribunal. But this next group will work closely to issue of responsibility of Russia, but and closer to very practical issue to return our children here and now, because it's issues that can't be prolonged to a long time. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I want to say you our gratitude for your attention and for your solidarity with Ukraine. But I want to ask you three simple tasks on the finish. First of all, from my president, Ruslan Stefanchuk, from the president of country, Vladimir Zelensky, I want to invite you to Ukraine. This distinguished tables, this distinguished hall of representatives and leaders of parliaments of small countries will be very, very honorable guests, you know, in any city of Ukraine, but especially in Kyiv, especially in this special center of protection of children's rights, especially with communication of Office of First Lady, of course with Office of President Zelensky. I think we will make very strong and very interesting and very powerful visit for your distinguished hall in Ukraine. We can choose any time and we can choose any possibility. Of course, our parliament now doesn't work usually like your parliaments, but we can make it meeting close to some plenary to give possibility to discuss with MPs, with Ukrainian MPs from territories, to receive the special information. Second, I want to invite you to support our initiative in terms of sanction, in terms of children return, in terms of special war criminal tribunal establishment. And third, last but not least, I would like to express sincere gratitude to the Mr. Regent, Chamber of Deputies of Luxembourg, for the historical voting on recognition on the Holodomor of 1932-1933 in Ukraine as genocide of the Ukrainian people. This step honors millions of victims and restores historical justice. The international acknowledgement of the Holodomor as genocide continues to rise. And I want to call on other democratic countries to follow example of Chamber of Parliament Luxembourg and to condemn Russian crimes committed against Ukraine since the beginning of the 21st century and to recognize the Holodomor as genocide. Thank you very much for your support to Ukraine. Thank you for this possibility to speak to you, and we will win, and we will win together for democracy, for freedom, and for future of Europe and of all civilized world. Thank you very much.